I've seen a lot of supposed leaks floating around online about Nintendo recently. Things like new Mario games, titles for Breath of the Wild 2, brand new games for the system, and new details on unreleased games, all kinds of different rumors and leaks. I don't buy pretty much any of them. Let's be honest, Nintendo leaks vary from 100% completely accurate and reliable to bullshit people just write up on 4chan fantasizing about a new Nintendo Direct. Obviously not every leak is complete bullshit, just most of them. I didn't believe the Mario 3D All-Stars stuff until I literally watched Nintendo announce it themselves, and that includes when people mentioned it after the video release but before I watched it. So why am I so skeptical of leaks? Let's flash back to mid to late 2018, during the hype leading to the release of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. One of the big debates was on which new characters would be added to the roster, alongside all of the returning characters from past Smash games. There were definitely a lot of characters people wanted, but there was debate after the reveal of Isabelle of how many more characters would even be included. After all, Sakurai did state early on that adding new characters wasn't a big priority for the team. However, in October, mere months before the game was going to launch, screenshots of a Snapchat story were spread online, nicknamed the Grinch Leak, which seemingly showed 7 brand new characters, along with a caption reading Nintendo MDRRR, which roughly translates to fuck Nintendo LOL. It was a bit brainy and not terribly focused, but the Smash community lauded it, calling it either 100% guaranteed, or at the very least the most realistic leak ever. I'm convinced they were all suffering from lead poisoning. Yes, this video is about to very quickly become shitting on the Grinch Leak 3.5 years after it was relevant, so strap in. So first off, let's discuss what made people so sure the leak was real, and also why the hell this thing is named after a Dr. Seuss character. In the bottom right corner of the main image with characters, and on top of one of the other screenshots, there were renders of the Grinch from the Illuminations adaptation, along with his dog Max. Now these renders had supposedly never been seen before, despite the earliest trailer for the film launching in March of that same year and the renders being very similar, if not identical, to screenshots from those trailers. Also, how would having access to renders of the Grinch even mean they'd have access to Smash info? Well, if we ignore the fact that the whole thing is clearly French, which I don't know, maybe Illuminations and Nintendo work with the same French marketing department, many pointed out that Illuminations was pinned as the creators of the Mario movie that 3 years later had everyone pissed off for different reasons. So, someone working with Illuminations could conceivably have access to high-level Smash Bros. Intel. No. Not only does that logic make absolutely no sense if you think about it for even 5 seconds, one of the other angles people discovered was that the Snapchatter who supposedly leaked all this worked for a Marina PLV, whose website apparently pointed to them working with Namco Bandai in the past and were also working on promotional materials for the Grinch film, at the same time with the same people apparently. Sure. Oh, and then it was apparently a completely different printing company, so none of this was relevant. Also, that website doesn't seem to be up anymore, so fact-checking is fun, isn't it? But let's get to the brass tacks. The meat and potatoes, the stars of the show. Let's look at the characters leaked in this story, and wow, someone was clearly insecure about their artistic abilities. Why does it look like this? Why not actually zoom in on the characters? Why print them out before taking the photo? And what is with these weird cuts on the JPEG that got spread around? But whatever, that's the sort of thing you have to deal with when you're looking at these kind of leaks. So first off, the most real part of this leak, as in actually part of the base game, is Ken from Street Fighter. Not the most unreasonable addition, obviously. I think most people when they heard of Echo Fighters thought, yeah, Ken would make a good addition. Hell, his pose is pretty much identical, albeit in a different position from the real final product. Another choice that many pegged as being real was Banjo and Kazooie, which, yeah, not in the base game. The duo did eventually make it in the game as DLC, and it is possible they were considered for the base roster, but ultimately all the evidence people found of them being viable picks wasn't enough to include them in the launch lineup. Also, I gotta say, this render is really generic compared to their actual appearance on the final banner. However, if we want to talk bad renders ruining otherwise credible inclusions, oh god, Shadow. This is literally just the standard Shadow render from the mid-2000s. Again, the choice is understandable. Shadow was a fan-favorite character, and it's not like making him an echo of Sonic would be impossible, but my god, is this render making the whole thing feel fishy. Sure enough, Shadow isn't a playable character in Ultimate to any degree, although he is an assist trophy at least. A similar thing could be said of Isaac, though to be honest, he and Gino kind of have the same problem in my eyes. Sure, it would be very cool if they were included, especially for the fans, but the problem is, they don't really have enough pull to be included. Their games are a bit too obscure and niche to be mainstream choices, and they're a bit too recent to work as oddball retro inclusions like Ice Climbers or Pit. Honestly, as ridiculous as Mock Rider being included feels, it's honestly a bit more realistic to me, especially given the game was one of the original Black Box titles. Still, it feels like it would be a bit redundant to take them off the bike since Captain Falcon is still around, while being a bit unrealistic to expect them to stay on the bike, so yeah, not really buying this one either. Finally, we have the Chorus Kids. What do you want me to say? They're the worst choice of the whole league. At least Isaac and Gino have gotten big nods in past Smash games. I know a lot of people like Rhythm Heaven, but even if they did get a rep in Smash, why would it be the Chorus Kids? What would they add? The same gimmick as the Ice Climbers, but with 3 characters? Why not have, like, Karate Joe, the character who has appeared in every Rhythm Heaven game and is an actual fighter, instead of the 3 kids who only ever appeared in one minigame? What, because one random leak said they'd be in Smash 4 and they got a trophy, suddenly Sakurai and his team are gonna bend over backwards to get the Cabbage Patch Kids in the biggest game in the series? This is the thing that really solidified for me back then that the leak was bullshit, and the people who were arguing their asses off that it was real were either talking shit or were just blinded by excitement. Sure enough, in November, the final pre-release Smash Ultimate Direct aired, and it confirmed 2 more characters to the base roster, one of whom the leak didn't even touch. It confirmed Shadow and Isaac were staying assist trophies, and the first DLC fighter was a fucking piranha plant. Naturally, there was some backlash to those who hyped up the Grinch Leak as the second coming of truth, but like, what do people expect? This is why I stopped believing leaks at all, because people talked about this like this sure thing, the most true truth to ever truth, when any critical thinking would say, hey, this is bullshit. So, yeah, don't hold out hope for Mario Odyssey 3 just because some random prick on the internet posts realistic looking box art, okay? Especially if it's on 4chan.